Hi, and thank you for joining us today on CIO Leadership Live. I am your host for the broadcast. I'm Mary Fran Johnson, and I'm very delighted to be joined today by Ken Piddington, who is a longtime friend of CIO Magazine and CIO.com's and IDC's, and he is currently the VP and Chief Information Officer at US Silica Company in Houston. Ken is an award-winning global business and technology leader with a history of successfully building and transforming technology strategy and operations at high-growth companies. He currently serves as CIO at US Silica, which is a $1 billion plus leader in industrial minerals and logistics that deliver more than 1,500 diversified products around the world. Before he took on the role at US Silica about 6 months ago, he held CIO positions in Houston at both SGR Energy and MRE Consulting. Ken and I first met when he was the CIO at Global Partners here in the Boston area, and that is a Fortune 500 logistics and energy products marketing company. Ken is widely respected in the Houston technology startup and VC community, where he's known for his innovative mindset and his passion for talent development. He also serves as one of our treasured advisory board members for IDC's CIO Executive Council. He's a mentor in the Pathways Leadership Development Program there. And he's also a respected thought leader and a published author. Ken has been a regular speaker at business and association conferences, including many of our own CIO events over the years, and he's a member of the Forbes Technology Council. On top of all that, he's very experienced at moderating panels with other CIOs on it, and he's taken to the stage at our conferences many times over the years. Ken, I really feel like you could be running this interview just as well as I could. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Mary Fran.
All right, let's dive into, I mentioned that you're in your first 6 months. I'm always so happy when I catch a CIO in that crucial first year, the honeymoon period. Yes. And I'm grateful you could come on, because sometimes CIOs just kind of stay under their desks and they don't do a lot of public speaking during that first time. But you're an experienced IT leader, so you're not afraid to get out there and talk about what you're doing.
I've certainly cut it down quite a bit, but saved my time for you.
Oh, good. Well, let's talk about that first 6 months at US Silica and tell us more about that business and what kind of challenges you are tackling these days.
Yeah, as I said, it's the honeymoon period, so there's a lot going on and really learning the organization. And some of the things that I've had experiences in the oil and gas and downstream energy business has been able to be very transferable, but there's a lot of new and a lot to learn. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, we're into mining and logistics and processing. We're over 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And we really break our business down into two segments, one about oil and gas and the other about industrials. In the oil and gas, you're really dealing with the ebbs and flows of a very volatile market. And inside that oil and gas business, we're delivering frac sand. So as long as we're drilling and completing wells in the shale basins in North America, we've got a lot of sand to sell. When that goes down, we've got to manage through those lulls in the business, those ebbs and flows. The other part of our oil and gas component is we're the logistics side. We do the last mile delivery of that sand through a division we have called Sandbox Logistics. I love the name.
Yes,
and
I
the
know.
Technology that goes to support that. On our industrial side, it's where the majority of those 1,500 plus products come into play, and these are in building products and chemicals and filtration. I know a good glass of wine or a beer is well enjoyed, and we do a lot of the filtration in the manufacturing process of those different types of alcohols, complete with glass and roof coatings and different things along those lines.
Yeah,
all fit into that area. So again, managing the ebbs and flows is a big challenge today. So in those first 6 months, learning the business, meeting my team, figuring out the key initiatives that were going on, what we were doing really well, what we had opportunities for improvement on, and as inevitable, there's always some project in there that's already underway that you're asked to help fix and keep moving along in the right way. And there's one of those that I got to experience day one.
Yeah.
And that was around our Sandbox Logistics side and putting out our new mobile application for our drivers, which we have about 800 plus, and how do we manage now as a product and engaging in that way, as opposed to thinking about just our our normal off-the-shelf software. So it's been really exciting. A lot of great people, great talented team at every level. And it's been a blast leveraging experiences and learning a lot new.
Shouldn't you be saying it's been a sand blast?
It's been a sandblast.
At this point, yes. Well, thank you. If you're just joining us on either Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube, I'm here live with CIO Ken Pittington of US Silica. And please send us in your questions. He is a very experienced CIO and will be happy to field any sort of questions that come up as you're listening to us today. Ken, I wanted to follow up a little bit about Sandbox Logistics, because that's a new acquisition for US Silica. And you referred to it as the FedEx for sand at the well site. And yeah. I love that. It gave me a way to grasp onto what the company is really all about. And then I also saw you shared a post on LinkedIn not long ago, and that talk about that a little bit and how many tons of sand that involved.
Yes. So yes, Scott, on the FedEx of the sand logistics, we're involved in that last mile. So from the distribution or manufacturing plant for the various frac sands and all the basins around North America, we are delivering that sand to our customers. We've got some unique technology that has allowed us to do that more efficiently and effectively and safely for our customers, really driving advantage and producing a lower cost for them. But as we think about the FedEx side, we're delivering sand that US Silica produces, which we'd like to have it be lots of that. But there's also sand that other companies are doing. We're just, again, providing the last mile logistics for our customers. There was a LinkedIn post, actually there's a couple of them recently, about the volume of sand we were able to deliver in a 24-hour period and the number of stages through the well completion process that was set records for us. We're able to do that. Most recently was a 24-hour period. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but it equated to about 105 or 106 trucks to one well site, which is about 48,000 pounds of sand per truck in the box. Was quite impressive, and we were able to do that in one day safely, that we're preventing any non-productive time for our customers, and delivered a large volume, continually setting records each and every day. Most recent post was about it, what I believe was over the last 45 days, being able to exceed that those targets each and every month.
Interesting. Well, I know you've been involved in a lot of energy companies over the course of your career, and then you've also done consulting. You've been involved in consulting businesses, probably also with energy and oil and gas companies. Is this, and I think what struck me about our conversation on this was the sheer number of products that you're producing on one side of the company, and you say 1,500 different products, and then on the other side, on the oil and gas side, it's like about 6 big products.
Correct. On the oil and gas side, it's really just different grades of the same product, depending on which region we're in. And the other side, it's, like I said, everything from filtration for beer and wine to roof coatings and sand to manufacture glass, and sand for sand traps, one of my favorite things for playing golf. So
yes,
a little of everything.
Well, does that pose any that differentiation, the one side of the business being very, I guess it's very high margin, and the other side being lower margin but very, very high velocity?
High volume.
How does that affect the way you have IT organized to kind of deal with all that?
Well, we've always had the two big components, but we've recently broke it down in 2019 into 4 distinct business units inside, 2 in industrials, 2 in oil and gas.
Okay.
IT is a shared service across all 4. So the big challenge on that today is really, how do we think about project prioritization? Where are we putting our efforts and the investment? Does it belong in one group versus the other? Is it because someone's screaming louder? Is there a strong process of debate and looking at the data related to it? I think we're continuing to evolve across all of that to do a better job. And as we think about our IT org and just sitting here as a group providing services across all 4, there are unique and distinct needs within each one of those business units. And we have to think about, how do we structure our services a little differently? How do we look at how our teams are engaged with each of them? How are they prioritized? And especially now that I mentioned the mobile application with Sandbox, we have a product now. We're not just off-the-shelf software. We have things that are out there in the market,
Right.
and that involves a different level of support and release management and thought behind it and how we get structured it. So I'm trying to really
Mm-hmm.
push our IT team to not thinking of ourselves as traditional IT and think about ourselves from more product focused, both with what we have out in the market, as well as how do we align better to each of the individual business unit needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another interesting, I think, juggling act that so many CIOs are dealing with today, where you may have some specific areas of work that is focused on traditional project management. You know, everything still has to run flawlessly on the operations side of it, but now you're also essentially bringing your IT staff, your direct reports, along on a journey to start thinking like product managers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that working well part is critical. That foundation has to remain solid no matter what. We can't do the product parts or any of the other interesting initiatives, whether we're talking about something within artificial intelligence and data analytics or robotic process. You know, pick your new emerging hot topic here. As you want to do any of those sexy things, you've got to have the solid foundation. So strive for solid foundation, very secure, and then you're able to move forward with other things. And thankfully, we've got a good foundation. We're doing a lot of things on the security front, continue to evolve that this past 6 months, and continue to strengthen the foundation, because without that, the rest of it doesn't matter. You're not able to do it.
True. You can talk all day about, that wonderful, I always think of IT systems as like a great big iceberg. And there's the top of the iceberg where it's really lovely. It's snowy and there's penguins running around and everybody's admiring it and taking pictures of it. And then underneath the water, there's usually this huge lurking complexity that happens with technology over time. And I was assuming that because US Silica is a 120-year-old company, that you would have a whole lot of legacy to deal with, but you surprised me on that one. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I surprised myself coming in on that one too. I expected a bit of that.
Yeah.
And really it isn't. We as a company, and kudos to the team and the thoughtfulness before it, and I'm getting to continue that on and add my own twist and spin to it. We are very much in the cloud, in that 85 to 90% of our systems, public, private, cloud, we have very little footprint in our own data center.
Wow.
And we believe in a cloud first strategy. So as we go down that road of continuing to evaluate new platforms, everything is looked at from a cloud perspective first.
Yeah.
Again, ensuring it's going to meet our business requirements and our security requirements to go out there and do what it needs to do to meet those needs and the requirements from the number of people that have to be on that system. And we've done that push. We recently in mid 2019 moved our on-premise ERP platform and EDI platforms to the cloud. We took them off-site and put them out there. And not only did we do it from a cost benefit perspective, we did it from a disaster recovery and perspective. And one of the gains that was kind of icing on the cake, but maybe not as well thought that we were going to achieve, was we actually got performance improvements. And that was a real big benefit as well. And that wasn't why we were doing it. It wasn't what we were counting on. But we were actually able to perform better in our new environment than we were on-prem.
Yeah. Well, some of this too, I'm very tempted to send out some kudos to the previous CIO, who I know you worked with during the transition. A lot of this kind of more forward-thinking approach to IT was going on even before you arrived.
Correct. Yes, she had done a great job and everything that was going on here. Wonderful. Great to have her help me and part of that transition. But that move to our ERP was already underway before I got here, and I got to continue on, as I said, add my own spin to things.
That's wonderful. Well, we have our first question from our audience, and it's a pretty good one. So thanks for sending this one in. Do you have any advice to help a CIO understand new business and how to formulate objectives to make a difference and add value? And
sure. A couple
very
things.
Good question.
Understanding your new business when is get deeply involved with meeting everybody as quick as possible, and don't come in and with that just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. Take the time up front before you actually get here through the interview process and those weeks or days leading up to your start. I did something called a stakeholder power map, and building out who I needed to meet with, who was most important, when I needed to get to them, and set my schedule and had a plan right from the start to meet with everybody and come in with a bunch of very pointed questions, not just how can IT, what can IT do for you? What did you like about IT?
Mm-hmm.
But talk to me about your business. Talk to me about what you do. How do you make our company's cash register work? How do you think I need to help make our company's cash register work in my team in order to do that cost effectively and efficiently? Because just because we can make the door open and close and bring revenue, if we're not doing it efficiently and effectively, we're not making the margins we'd like to do. So that's a big part for me coming in, is really taking the time to plan out who I was meeting with and have a solid background there. The other part, as much research as you can do up front on your industry and reading all the things your own company puts out, and then get out there in the field, go see it. It's been a great experience getting to visit some of our different plants and see it in action, and you really get a good idea for what goes on when you get to do that. So don't sit in your office and expect it all to just magically happen. You've got to get out there in the field.
In my experience, almost nothing magical happens in people's offices. It's almost always out when you're connecting with other people. I love the name of that, your stakeholder power map. I'm having a strong feeling that you should trademark that ASAP, or maybe it's time we do a webcast about that where we dive in a little deeper. How did you formulate that stakeholder power map? Is that something you've done before?
I have done it before. It's actually, you mentioned the work with the Council for the Leadership Development. It's something I do. I actually have a session on developing stakeholder relationships.
Excellent.
And that power map is something I share a template for with my groups. I remember how many years I've been doing this now. It's been a long time.
Okay. Now, I remember years ago when we were first writing about you in probably Computer World and CIO Magazine, you were always a go-to source for information about how to do a really good job managing your vendors. And you did things at Global Partners when you were with them that were a little extraordinary at the time. Like you would have an entire technology day where you got all of the top executives of the company and everybody. It was like a big powwow and almost like a job fair with all of your vendors.
Our strategic partner summit.
That's what
that was our big dinner for about 150, 160 people. And I have not re-implemented that exactly yet. But the foundation for the vendor program is being laid as we're continuing to evaluate the vendor community, our partners that we're working with here. Again, I think it's probably one of the unique things, or one of the things I think everybody coming into their new CIO role has to think about. Just because I've done this here before and been successful here doesn't mean it perfectly translates for your new organization. And if you think that way, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. You've got to come in with a clean slate, new mindset, leverage your experiences. Don't expect just because I did it this way here, I can do it the same way at the new organization. Culture is different. Your people are different.
Right.
You've got to find what's going to be right for that organization. So as I've been knowing the importance and believe strongly in the importance of how you work with your vendor community to leverage them to get the right benefits for your organization. One of my statements in my program has always been, I've created it because I was tired of the negative event-driven relationships, and I wanted them to be very positive. So they weren't just trying to sell me that shiny box off the shelf. We were looking at how to create real value together for our organization. So I've been laying the foundation, getting ready for how we're going to put our new program together here at US Silica.
Well, and you have been in this business for a while now. Are you seeing a difference in when you're dealing with your vendor partners, or perhaps just vendors that you hope will become partners? Are you seeing a different level of their engagement with you as the CIO? I know you've been spreading the gospel on this for many years, and I wonder, do we have very many believers out there in the technology vendor community?
Yeah. I do with those that have worked with me in the past. They already know what to expect, and they are excited.
They need to get to know Ken.
That's right. Find that opportunity to work with us again. And those that have done the right things in the past are certainly ones I'm going to call first. Has it all trickled down throughout the masses of it? No. The volume of those crazy emails and the magical, I know everything about your business, I'm going to solve it today, you've never met me.
Yeah.
where you think we're just like somebody else without taking the time again to get to know us.
Right.
Yeah, it still happens quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I
More than I can
remember.
count.
I know the frustration. I think I've heard this frustration expressed by many CIOs over the year, where they'll finally agree to a meeting, and then someone will come to the meeting from one of the technology vendor companies, and they'll sit down and be ready to interview them. Tell me all about your business. And there's probably nothing that ticks off CIOs more than that, because they're like, go do your homework, then come back to see me.
Yeah, the one that upset me the most is I had a gentleman who came in, young guy with his big army of people came in and kept telling us that we were just like his other customer. We were just like his other customer. And I kept saying, finally I said, stop. Tell me how you can help us and what about us? Because we are not like them.
Yeah.
Not like them at all. We get classified in the same industry, but we are totally different. I'd give anything to have his budget.
Oh,
we are not.
Yeah.
They were a Fortune 25 company.
Yes.
And I said, we were not. We were Fortune 500, but we were not down that
Right.
number. And eventually it got tired of it. I had to throw them out.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. You want to have people that are a little quicker learners working on all this. If you are just joining us now, I'm in a, not surprisingly, a fascinating conversation with Ken Piddington, who is the VP and CIO of US Silica. And we're about to start talking about changing customer expectations and how his IT group is handling that. In fact, it's a group now that they have a product on the App Store. So if you're just joining us and you want to send in a question to Ken, we are monitoring all of our live feeds on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube on the IDG Tech Talk channel. Okay, let me jump next, Ken, to that changing customer expectation. I know you're not a retailer, you're not a restaurateur, your people are probably not on a daily basis getting face to face with customers, but how do you track what the customer expectations are and how they're changing? And is that something that is is in your top 3 priorities to address as CIO, or do you have other more important things to think about at this point?
It's in my top 5, absolutely,
Okay.
if not 3, of things to address. To me, you got to continually, even though we said we're not in that retail, you're not going into our shop and browsing the shelves to pick a product out, and you're not coming to sit down in our restaurant. So you start to think about that it's not the same from a customer perspective. But I truly believe we have an opportunity to leverage technology to create value-added services and visibility into what we're doing for our customers, make us easier to do business with. In the oil and gas space specifically, we can argue either way whether the sand has become a commodity. But if it has, then what else can you do to differentiate yourselves to say that our customer wants to buy sand from us as opposed to our competitor? So the more we can do to help the customer better understand what we're doing for them, how we're delivering that product, understanding the inventories, visibility into contractual obligations, other services. Maybe we're better integrated into their back-end systems to reduce their cost of doing business with them. These are the things that I believe is an opportunity for us to do. Then you take what we're doing on the product side specific to Sandbox with our drivers, and maybe we start to look at different IoT aspects of it and say, where is my box of sand? Where is my truck? And being able, just like you can do with your Uber driver. I know when my Uber driver is going to be pulling around the corner and up in front of our house. Why can't I know exactly when my truck full of sand is going to arrive?
Yes. Well, and that totally makes sense, because you could see how customers might think, well, sand is sand after all. And there may be different qualities of the sand for various things, but it's really about how they're dealing with US Silica as a company, and whether you're making customers happy the way you wish all your vendors would make you happy. Yeah.
Right. So there's an opportunity for my team is really to again get out of the office and get to where we're not there in a store. You can go to a number of our plants where we've got trucks coming through on the oil and gas side and picking up product, and get a chance to talk to them. It was again working with our business development and sales teams who are deeply engaged, obviously, with our customer base, and let's go chat with them and learn more. Let's go on a sales call.
Yes.
You mentioned that I've had a lot to do in the energy and oil and gas space over my career. I know a lot of our customers or different segments of our customers already. So that ability for me to get to know our customer better, particularly taking a different spin and come in from the technology side and kind of partner with them is the idea, how can we work better together to help your different operations groups buy from us and us be your preferred partner.
Yeah. Well, and that must feel quite different to the customers as well, having the conversation with the top technologist and rather than the top salesperson.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that salesperson is a great person and all that, but he's got a different mindset.
Yeah, I think that's the opportunity for us, is to really leverage those relationships, leverage the fact that we can get out in front and go and be part of and help change the conversation, get my team out of their comfort zone and get them out there with them to help leverage what we can do.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Well, people just love to get out of their comfort zones, don't they?
Yeah, we got to focus on all that change. And that's,
I know. I've been a fan for probably decades now of that Dilbert cartoon that says, change is good, you go first.
Yes.
I want to circle around next and talk about data analytics. But before that, I've got questions kind of related to that. And it's asking about what are the most important metrics to measure as a CIO? Kind of the way data analytics about how CIOs are doing their jobs are starting to change in terms of what you talk about to the business. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, I got to answer. Yeah, I always think, the metrics needed are going to be different from company to company about what's important to you. So for us, how much sand is flowing out from a product perspective. But again, it's going to be different from business unit to business unit and how we talk about that. So how do we equate IT investment to the per unit cost of putting product out? How do we look at the metrics from what we're doing related to our contribution margin, or how we impact our EBITDA numbers? Really very financially driven, but also they're on, like I said, the per unit, the volume going through the door of our products are important metrics to measure for success. We measure things. Well, coming in, we measured things like my availability of systems and infrastructure, which is very poorly do, but it's not a measurement that I want to distribute to the rest of the organization. I want to take those metrics and say, what do they mean because we did them? Or what did it mean if we didn't meet them to our business? Back to my statement earlier about the cash register. That's what's most important to me, and the type of metrics I want to look to, of course, for our group.
Well, I remember all the talk over the years, and we're probably going back to the 90s and the early 2000s at this point, where IT leaders were always getting slammed by business people for sharing metrics that the business couldn't even pretend to care about. Right. Great, you've got 99.5% uptime. I want to talk about those 2 times that the network wasn't up.
Right, exactly. But I also look at it today and how we communicate what we're doing from a technology perspective.
Yes,
can impact our external shareholders and how they'll look at a company. From that perspective, do they believe that technology is doing the right thing? It's not just about maintaining compliance and availability. It's what else are you doing that differentiates your company, our product out in the market? Are we doing the right things from a cybersecurity perspective? We do some cybersecurity training and we have awareness videos, and there's a survey that comes at the end. Besides, if you've paid attention and clicked the right box and answered the question properly about what's the right thing or the wrong thing to do.
Yes.
But we've asked about behavior, and one of the things I've been most proud about from our security team in just the 6 months I've been here is we've really helped, in my opinion, change the behavior of our employees, making us safer. And I mentioned safety a couple of times. I mentioned it in how we deliver the SAN. One of our core values is safety, and we are very, very focused on safety as a company. We had some of our best safety numbers in the history of the company this past year. So I've taken the IT side of it and talk about digital safety and how do I tie that in. And we've changed behaviors. We've got survey results in excess of 70% of our employees saying we've done something because of how we've been trained and learned here on the job that impacts our day-to-day to be safer from a cybersecurity perspective. And that's been a proud number for me and my team to say it wasn't just about delivering a project. We actually changed behaviors.
That's great. And that has to be something that the CEO and the board take note of as well, because it's a big concern. And we have an incredibly apt question to go with that. One of our audience members who are listening asked if there were any professional certifications that you look for or value more in your cybersecurity personnel.
Wow. So
Mm.
one versus the other, I'd say I'd have to ask my security director which ones he appreciates more for the rest of his team. I mean, I want you to do all the right things that we have. I'm really actually been more interested in finding some cybersecurity folks that can communicate with the rest of the organization and can understand the business value of security
Yes.
as opposed to just the technical side. So I apologize, I can't answer say all the right letters
Yeah.
that go after that for the certification. I may have to go pause on that one and ask my security director. I
hit
apologize.
hit pause. Well, it's funny because I was interviewing a CIO last time. I had a CIO from a college out in on the West Coast, and he had a whole list of security qualifications, and I was going to name them all off when I was introducing him, and he said, "Oh no, wait, I need to renew that certification, so don't mention that one." Because the security people are very strict about that sort of thing. But we have another. Let me see. I've got another follow-up question, and this is from one of our regular fans on LinkedIn. So, hello, Richard. Good to hear from you again. Richard Cope would like to know, how do you approach running IT like a startup when you may have significant amount of legacy baggage to unpack, and you don't have that problem at US Silica now? But do you have advice for other CIOs that don't have that wonderful position of not a huge amount of the iceberg under the water?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and even if you had the legacy, I still think there's an opportunity to think more like a startup as you look at different technologies and try to find ways to move things a whole lot faster, and recognizing that everything isn't that big old legacy ERP system implementation that we have 18
Mm-hmm.
months, 2 years or longer that's going on. We've got to be able to be much more nimble. So I think the opportunity is figuring out what your team looks like. Where uh, do you have the right skills to do that? They just need a different focus on their leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they not, and how do you develop them? And then where do you need to go outside and either hire new to add to that team, or leverage some of your partners differently? But it's just thinking differently, and how do we move faster? To me, I think
Mm-hmm.
I believe the concept of being able to have IT go at the speed of business, and whatever that means for your organization is what you need to think about. I actually have 4 different business units, and they're all moving a little bit different pace.
Right.
And how do we make sure that we focus on each of them? If you don't have all the legacy, even if you do, I think leveraging the cloud more is really, really important in giving you some of that speed and flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I also think you need to look outside of the traditional partners, that companies that you might do business with. I mean, we've all got the
Yeah.
big players. They all serve a role, but if you really want to start, excuse me, acting more like that startup and find ways to be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more flexible, you've got to go and get creative and look outside what you've always known,
Mm-hmm.
outside that comfort zone again,
Yes.
and go see some of these other companies. And don't just say, I only do companies who make a certain amount of revenue. Well, you take something to get in there. You might find that diamond in the rough that you can mold and help fix to what you need, with low risk to doing that. So you kind of have
Mm-hmm.
a plan for how do you evaluate these emerging tech companies? How would you implement them? How do you work with your team? How do you continue to develop your team to shift gears to move at the right speed that your organization?
Yeah. Well, and then following up on that last question, we have another one of our regulars, Isaac Sakalik. He sends in a question building on Richard's question. Where are you trying to model startup practices, and where do you have to operate in more of an enterprise fashion?
How am I trying to model? So I'm going to
Model.
mention agile, because I know Isaac is a
Okay.
big agile guy. But yeah, I think as you think about those methodologies that might get applied or modeled into there, we talk about agile, we want to talk about DevOps, and I believe
Yes.
a big part is data ops that has to go along with it. None of them work perfectly, in my opinion, for every single organization. Just take it out of the box and just plug it in here and it's all going to magically work.
Right.
Every organization's culture is different, and we need to look at that based on your experiences and what you need, apply the right parts, and then continue to go back and learn from your experiences, the lessons learned, and continually tweak to make it fit for your organization.
Yeah.
We very much try to be, we're probably the closest to getting towards a traditional agile or more pure agile methodology of how we approach things within our sandbox group, because it's a newer company as a whole.
It was already in the
acquired.
cloud. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all that there. I mean, They never had a data center, as an example.
There you go. It's a lot easier to be agile if you don't have a data center.
And the mindset's there, where I think a lot of our others are a little bit more hybrid. Whether we want to call it agile fall or water Jill, which you want to add different naming things to it. So I'm really trying to model that. But to me, I'd like to have more one structure, and the organization can move at that speed together.
Okay.
But that's really where I've been looking at.
Well, and this is a hot topic right now on our forums because there's a follow-up to that about, saying that organizations have been moving to the cloud for more than a decade and even moving to hybrid cloud. What are your thoughts on the latest in the areas of multi-cloud adoption? When I hear multi-cloud adoption, I immediately think of oh yay, more complexity.
Well, there is, but I think you've had it for a long time. I'd challenge anybody to take a good look and say they weren't actually multi-cloud to begin with. And so let's figure out what multi-cloud means.
Yeah.
When the first initial definition means I've got something in Azure and I've got something in AWS, and that's their first definition of multi-cloud. You may have that. You might have your own private cloud, and think about all your SaaS applications that are in all over the place. That's cloud too. So we've got SaaS applications, we have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and you got some of your own private stuff, and we have that. We have all of it today in our organization. So it does add complexity at a lot of ways, especially if you have to start to integrate. And as you think about your security, especially on the public side, what you can get in AWS, what you can get in Azure, what you can get in Google Cloud are not all the same. Right. They're not all going to function the same. And then you bring in some other partners' cloud environment as well, and what does that mean? So you've got security concerns across organizations. You may not be able to do the exact same thing with the same tools across the board. Yeah. And then on top of that, you've got multiple different vendor contracts to manage around that. So you want to try and streamline those terms of agreements and make sure, or actually consolidate those, and best so you're managing one way and one another way. So I think back to vendor management, how do you standardize what you want to do and bring that to your partners, as opposed to what they're just coming with off the shelf, or at least have an idea so you know how to negotiate and manage that. But the other part is really thinking about, how do I integrate? And how do I work if I've got system A in one environment and system B in another environment? Data's got to come together, and I've got to manage those environments. That mobile application and stuff we do on our trucking dispatch actually lives in multiple places. Part of it in a Microsoft Azure cloud, part of it in Oracle's OCI environment. So I've got things in two different places that we have to bring together. It makes it really challenging for testing and data management, and keeping that in sync. Again, part of that goes back to my statement about data ops and how we manage our data in order to streamline that process. And that's, again, something we're starting to get serious about.
Yes. Well, one of the things that you and I talked about was under that the kind of rubric of how the technology operation is currently structured to deliver more business value. And you're saying that already you have a very committed team. Everything was running really smoothly when you got here, very few outages, no major downtimes, and that you exceeded even those targets in 2019. But there was something you discovered that everybody wasn't good at.
And remind me. No.
And I'll remind you that it was around thinking like a product management team instead of project managers. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we're very good on all the availability. We've done a good job there, through process and tools, and there's always some duct tape to go along with it to keep things moving as best they can. But we were very good at off-the-shelf software. We were really good at unwrapping the shrink wrap, putting that in place, configuring that to meet our business needs, and keeping that moving well and meeting the demands of our organization. Now, fast forward into what we're doing today with the mobile application, some web applications that we've developed. Now we've got product, both, as you said, in the App Store and some that is purely internal. But that kind of release cycle that has to go on in there, that kind of mentality of having a product that not all just people inside your four walls are using, how do you continue to maintain and support that and think differently about its product roadmap?
Yeah.
And what goes on. It's not about managing from statement of work to statement of work. We've got to think really about product strategy, product roadmap, and how do we make sure our teams are thinking that way and working in that environment, not just I unwrapped the piece of software, we installed it,
Right.
we maintain it, we apply the patches, and we're good.
Yeah.
It's a very different world.
Well, and you mentioned when we talked that you actually had another major release that went out, I believe, yesterday on March 1st.
Yes, we are live today
You're
with the
live
new release of the
today.
mobile app and
Yeah.
the web app platform as well.
Mm-hmm. How did that go? Was everybody as exhausted and stressed as the
knock
last
on-
release?
Knock on wood, everything has gone very smoothly. It was a lot of great effort from the team to make that happen. Coming into here for our great talk today, I have not seen or heard anything negative about the release. So
no news is good news.
No news is good news on that. I will certainly be checking when we're finished here, but
yes.
Everything has been smooth so far.
Well, good. Well, I'm grateful that you're not checking while we're in motion here, live recording. I've got another question from our very attentive audience here. They'd like to know how you organize your team to drive digital innovation at the same time when you've got to run and maintain that day-to-day operation and deliver all those tons of sand and make sure the data analytics are getting in the right places and all that. So that's a great area to just get into because you've had a lot of experience over your career driving new areas of innovation. So how are you doing that at US Silica, and what is some of your advice overall for CIOs in that area?
Yeah, I've seen them groups who have decided that innovation happens over here and it's one little silo and everything else happens over here. And that's not the way I do it. I'm very much, my team will tell you I've been preaching the anti-silo concept, and we are one IT team across everything that we do and how we function. And so to me, it is about one IT team and how we understand what goes on at the foundation, making sure our foundational services, keeping everything working, are moving smoothly. So, and as automated as possible so that we can move on to, as a team, to focus more on what's next and how do we grow that organization. And you said digital innovation, which is great. I'm glad you didn't say digital transformation.
I think we're all tired of that term, aren't we?
So it's really about how do we continue to transform the business of what we're doing and leveraging technology to do that, leveraging these digital tools and platforms. So for me, it's about one team. It's not that innovation comes from any one separate segment. It needs to come and be encouraged from all. One of the things we've talked about, I have not implemented it here yet, but I have done it in the past, and we're talking about it here, is my concept of our, and no pun intended, our innovation sandbox, and an opportunity.
You do love that name, sandbox. Yes,
I really do. Is a place where the team can experiment, give them the opportunities where they can bring some business cases to me of like, I want to invest in X because I think there's going to be value here for our company, and this is why I see the value, and see if they can convince me, sell me on that idea to help make sure that can go ahead and happen, that they have the opportunity to play in the sandbox, if you will.
Well, and speaking of sandboxes, you're actually in a pretty good spot in your newly adopted hometown of Houston. I know from talking with some of your colleagues at, healthcare IT and in the university crowd, you've got an innovation hub happening in Houston. And I keep seeing your name popping up where you're moderating a panel at this or that innovation activity area. Talk a little bit about what's going on in Houston with innovation in the greater IT community.
There's a lot going on here, particularly around that as we think about these newer companies and trying to foster innovation from the higher ed perspective, and them creating environments for organizations to come together with the startup community and higher ed to create opportunities of these, and there are multiple of them going on. The one you're speaking of specifically new is tied in with Rice University, and it's this old Sears building downtown that's being remodeled and refitted to create this innovative. There's a couple of universities that are involved, and it's designed for companies to come and bring their people there and bring challenges to the companies or to the students that are there, and look to try to find unique and creative ways to solve that. And there's other places here as well that are going on in a similar way. There's one called the Cannon. It's the one I actually got to speak at the other day and moderated a panel with a gentleman who runs this community for startups and for big corporations to come in and work together Another gentleman who was on that panel spoke solely around what they do for the industrials in the oil and gas energy space around technology, both operational and IT. And one was just about healthcare. So it was really exciting to see it and hear what was going on and the investments they were making, and a lot of the Shark Tank like programs that were starting to happen, where people were looking to find and do some creative ways to find the right solution and help fund these startups. So it's becoming a little bit. We're not Silicon Valley, we're not Boston, we're not Austin yet in that area, but I think we're certainly up and coming, and there's enough diverse industry. We're not just about oil and gas in Houston. There's a lot of healthcare.
Yes.
There is now a lot of technology. There's a lot of financial services. We still, bleed black gold from the oil side, as we always have.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it than that, and I think that's helping drive some of this interesting opportunities from the technology. And I think it's also, there's a number of my other CIO peers here around town who were very involved in either solely within their company or in a community aspect here in Houston to get more involved with these different startups, either to help provide guidance and advisory, or to find ways that they can evaluate these companies, not just doing it on their own, but in groups, and find ways to bring more of that innovation to the table.
Well, and that's I was just in Salt Lake City in the last few days. I was giving a talk at a CIO Summit conference out there, and I heard all about Silicon Slope, is what they call it out in the Salt Lake City area. And they were describing one of those kind of annual innovation get-togethers that started just maybe 5 years ago, and it had 50 people there, and they just had their last one, and there were over 500. So it's fascinating to see how those innovation incubation kind of communities are growing up, and it's so important that CIOs be involved in it. One of the speakers who was talking about it asked for a show of hands who had gone to it, and it was probably only about maybe 10% of the room, because of course everybody else was doing their day jobs and they didn't get to go to it, and he was scolding them all and saying, you need to get out there and you need to see what's going on. You've always made a real point of doing that.
Well, I have. I believe it's important in staying, for not just for me, but for my team, to stay educated on what's out there. The pace of change and technology is too quick for us to sit back in our office and think we just, it's the ERP system. We know what's there. Even those are changing so quickly. And what your organization needs isn't just going to come from the same companies you've always dealt with. You've got to get out there. You've got to experiment. You've got to stay in tune to it, because I don't want my CEO coming to me and saying, hey, did you hear about this company and this company and this company? And they already want to go down a path. I want to be, and I want my team to be out on the forefront of that and bringing these ideas to the table. Excellent. And being able to partner with the others in our organization, not being an afterthought.
Yes.
And that means we've got to get out there and stay educated.
Yes.
Stay informed.
That's a great point. We have a question now from one of our YouTube viewers, and this is about when you're running your IT as a startup. Are you an earlier adopter of technology trends, or do you prefer to adapt? And how has either helped you deliver value to the organization?
I don't think I'm a fast follower. I'm not always first. But
like
definitely
most CIOs,
but not waiting till it's, we always think about the hype cycle. I'm not on that down and flattened out spot. I'm definitely still in the rise towards the top. I probably won't be the very first, but I'll certainly be pretty early on. And I want to often leverage the experiences, both good and bad, from my peers. I'm very love to be connected with my CIO community and find out what's worked and what hasn't worked, and share my own experiences in trying to do that. But I do think you have to have an idea of where you're going, where you want it to go, so you can start to see, kind of have that vision of where those pieces all plug in. So you understand what you're doing, so you're not wasting your time in the wrong areas and you're focused in the right areas. Kind of goes back to one of your original questions about I think you asked about new CIO and understanding how to get involved, engaged in. One of the things I forgot to say there, and it relates to this as well.
Okay.
And it's really being able to decode your corporate strategy, understanding what those initiatives are going to help make sure you're focused on the right things here, and also going to help you if you were new, and trying to figure out how to better understand your organization.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. Good. I'm glad it floated back up in your head because it's a really great one. Is there also, from a CIO point of view, how is the balance changing, that dividing line between outsourcing and insourcing? It's like it's such a pendulum swing. I've watched it over the last few decades, from Computer World through CIO Magazine. For a while, everybody's doing everything in SaaS, and then on the media side, we start assuming that, well, everybody's outsourcing their IT and working with all these SaaS providers. And then just last week, I interviewed a CIO from a defense and aerospace company, and he described himself as cloud averse. And and at first I thought I had misheard. I said, you don't mean cloud first? And he was like, no, I mean cloud averse. So what do you think is the right balance? Where's the dividing line between?
Well, it's always different for every organization, has been for me. I don't even use those terms here
anymore.
Okay. I don't think I've ever, other than maybe I've used outsourcing in somewhat of a negative connotation to it. To me, it's about leveraging our partners to right size what we do as an organization. And sometimes that means being able to, I believe, being able to turn the dial up and down on what we need based on the needs at that moment. I was actually in a renewal conversation with a great partner of ours and talking about, I need us to adjust to the ebbs and flows of our business. And I said, I literally want to dial on how I dial up and dial down your services, not figuring it out as we get there. I want to plan this now. Yes. that mix to us, some will say it's 50, some it's 90-10. There's no right number for any organization. Depends on your team. It depends on your culture. It depends on your partners and what you need. I'm really focused on what do we need to do to keep our business moving at the right pace. There has to be in the foundation solid. What do we need to do? Where does it make more sense? Because it's more commodity type, but I can put that off to a partner who can do it better, faster, cheaper than we can at the same or higher level of service. And then really take the items that are differentiating and create us more of that competitive advantage and hold on to those and own those more internally.
Well, I heard one CIO I was speaking with recently described it as the big difference between doing Agile as a technology approach and being Agile as an IT group and as a company, and I thought it was a great way to put it. You change just a few letters in that word. You go from doing Agile to being Agile. And when you talk about being Agile, that's actually something that you don't have to break down and explain any terminology to business people.
Not the terminology, but sometimes the actual steps and requirements and their role and responsibility in making it work across. Because Agile in any way is not an IT thing. It is a company
That's right.
thing.
Yeah.
And we can't have part of the company mowing at one pace in one way and another part trying to do something differently. We've got to all be on the same boat, going in the same speed.
Yeah. Well, we had one very specific short question about whether you use robotic process automation. Are you doing any experimenting with RPA, or do you already have it? Because every CIO I know is doing automation all over the place, but RPA is kind of our one of the newer, hotter types.
One of my new favorite 3-letter acronyms, yes.
Is it really? Okay.
It is. So it is something I believe for us is a technology that we need to put in our toolkit. I'm looking at it closely. We've been evaluating it from a couple of different providers to solve, hopefully, a number of different opportunities that we have internally. We are starting a POC around that for one particular group here later this month.
Okay. Well, we have an excellent follow-up to that question, too, about how you develop a learning organization, given that you're running several systems within the company.
One of the ways of doing is planning your people's time to give them the opportunity to spend time learning. If we think about solely of what do I need from our time for all of our people to keep the lights on and do these projects that either help grow or transform the business, and we forget about the people side and how do we develop them to have the time and the mindset to go out and experiment and learn some things, you'll fail because there's only so many hours in a day. And if all we've done is plan for what we need to do to keep the lights on and run those projects, we didn't give them any availability to do that. So when I look through resource planning, there is absolutely a time for development for every single person, whether you're on my leadership team, right on to the person who's a tier 1 technician on our support desk. Part of that for me, especially my leadership, is to kick them a little bit and say, get out of the office and go to one of the events that's here around town or one of the other national events and go spend some time there. But I also like to do it very focused. I want them with an agenda for themselves of what they want to learn, what they're trying to get out of it, who they're trying to meet. Is there a company that's going to be sponsoring that's we think would be valuable to get to know, and have a purpose. Don't just go to say I'm going there to network and then sit at your table and play with your phone the whole time. So it has to be purposeful in how you get out and go about that. I also do. I've been joked about. I've done it for years, and I've started it again here about my book club. And I give books to my team. They're designed. I've given both to the entire IT department as well as another set that I do just with my leadership team. And they're all books that I've read and have had some impact on my career and my thought process. And they're designed to help us learn and designed to help us knock down those silos and become one IT team.
Yes.
So that's part of that learning culture that you need to create.
Tell me about a little bit about a few of your recent favorite books on your list, something that has made an impression.
Well, one of the books that I give everybody, this first book I give everyone here, is called The QBQ. It's the question behind the question. It is about personal responsibility and accountability. One of my all-time favorites. Short, easy read, but it's great coming into an R&B and helping set the expectations. Right now, myself and my leadership team are reading a book called You Can't Know It All. We're reading it together. And we actually have our first meeting to discuss the first few chapters this Wednesday of that book. But it's about the concept of we grew up, particularly in IT, as expert leaders. We're very focused in our domain of area of operations, whether it's infrastructure, applications, or security. We know that we're really deep there. But as you move and progress through your organization to become a greater leader, it's not just about being a leader of your domain. It's being a part of the leader of that whole team and the organization. And how do you become what they, in the book refers to as being a spanning leader? And how do you, where you don't know all the details in this other particular, but you've got to be able to lead people in that area and talk to them and understand the importance of it. How do you grow yourself and expand? And it's really quite interesting. I'm excited to see the feedback and how my team takes that book and is able to apply some of the learnings there to help us continue to grow as a group and as a company.
Well, that's wonderful. And I have a book I've been recommending to all of my CIO friends, and it was last summer at our Boston event. The author came and talked about it. He's Hal Gregerson at MIT, and his book is called Questions Are the Answer. And it's not written for technology people at all. It's basically about, and he has a question burst method in there where he explains like you're sitting down and someone is telling you about a problem. And instead of, it's a human tendency to say, oh, well, why don't you try this, this, and this? And you start trying to give them the solution. But the only response you're allowed to make is to continue to ask them questions. And he's got all kinds of great stories in the book. You know, he's interviewed people like Mark Benioff from Salesforce and all sorts of brilliant people. And he talks about how so many great ideas start with a question. And it can be a question like, why is enterprise software so damn expensive and hard to deal with? And then how that eventually led to the multi-billion-dollar Salesforce.com today. So I've been finding that really interesting.
Very good. Well, that book is on my bookshelf at home. I have not read it yet, but I do have it.
Yep. I've actually got it on my Kindle, and I take it out every now and then because I've been talking about it a lot with my CIO friends. And I think we are just about at time on our conversation today.
All right.
Didn't I tell you this hour would just fly by?
It goes very quickly. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Do you have any parting words of encouragement or leadership that you would like to put out there, not just to like CIOs who are as experienced and knowledgeable as you, but to some of our younger colleagues or our next generation CIOs who are coming into these very multivariate jobs now that the whole Chief Information Officer title now encompasses? You know, if you were a CIO starting out in your late 30s, early 40s, what advice would you give these next generation CIOs?
Well, I think we said part of it earlier about stepping out of your comfort zone. I really do believe that the opportunity to add value in your organization goes beyond what we think about as the traditional CIO role.
Mm-hmm.
That whether we change the title and make it Chief Digital Officer, Technology Officer, or Innovation, or combine any combination of all those wonderful letters, ability to step out of your comfort zone and realize that the opportunity here, if we think about traditional work being inside the firewall, now it's about being and operating outside the firewall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where we can leverage technology to drive unique value for our organizations. And I think those IT, whether you're new or well established, who are ready to take that step to the other side of the firewall, out of their comfort zone, is where you're going to create the most value for your company. So think and be like a business technology leader, not the IT guy, and is really going to make a big difference. And I think that's what I've been able to do in my career. And that's what I encourage my teams to think like and talk about, like our statement. It's not about 5 nines. It's what does that mean towards making the cash register work and moving our business forward.
Yes. Well, I know you've left a great swath of very well-educated and ready leaders behind you, because I know that talent development is something that's always been very near and dear to your heart. So
absolutely.
Thank you for the mentoring work that you continue to do with our CIO Executive Council. And thank you for your time here today. It was absolutely delightful.
Thank you very much, Mary Fran. Greatly appreciate it.
Yes. Now, if you just joined us at the close of the show and you're thinking, oh no, I've missed this chance to hear Ken Pittington talking about IT leadership, do not fear. We later today we will have the full recording of this interview available on CIO.com. And if you joined us late for that, you can watch the episodes there. We also have the full library of CIO Leadership Lives that are there. We've done more than 40 of these interviews now over the last 2.5 to 3 years. And my next guest will be on Monday, March 23rd. We'll be back with the CIO and Executive Vice President of Hackensack Meridian Health in New Jersey. And that will be David Rice, who's going to join me here at 11 a.m. Eastern. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is IDG Tech Talk. And please keep coming back to take part and participate in these wonderful in-depth conversations with CIOs like Ken Pittington and many more to come. Thanks so much for joining us today. Take care.